churches pa even, no? Baka pwedeng
Sure.
ibukas yung mga simbahan. Or, sir, nakikita niyo ba yung pwedeng sabay or magkasunod, magpabakuna tapos magparehistro kung hindi sila nakarehistro? Di
Well,
ba?
let's see. We'll see what happens there. Kasi, alam mo, I totally agree with the need for vaccination. But I don't know lang if what sort of preparations have
Yeah.
to be put in place for the actual process, because as I understand it, some of the vaccines are kind of delicate. So
Yes.
you'd have to have special conditions in order to
Sure. That,
conduct vaccinations. Eh yung mga registration natin, mga rough and tumble yan eh. Medyo
yeah.
mainit, masikip in some places. So I really don't know how that can be in the same place.
Pero yun, pareho nating responsibilidad yun. Last na lang before we entertain questions. Again, you can like, comment, and share this particular episode kasi mahalaga po to. Ngayon, sir, paano at ano yung mga requirements para magrehistro, sir?
For registration, ang kailangan mo lang naman talaga valid ID, no? A
Okay.
valid ID. A valid ID can be, a driver's license, a passport, a company ID, a school ID. But here's the thing. When we say valid ID, what we want is an ID that proves your identity,
Okay.
therefore pasok ang passport. But also, a valid ID is one that verifies your residence.
Okay.
Therefore, a passport is an incomplete valid ID, if you take my meaning, no?
Yeah.
Because it will prove your identity, but it will not prove your residence. So
Mhm.
if you're going to use a passport, then you're going to have to bring with you other proof of residence. So katulad niya ng mga billing
Billing. Yeah.
statements, yan. Or if you're renting, then a copy of the lease contract in your name. That would be acceptable as a proof of residence. Now, Noel, marami tayong kababayan na walang-walang ID. No?
Yes.
Walang-wala talaga.
Yes.
I was surprised when I found out about that a long, long time ago. No?
Pero ngayon, sir, parang required na kasi kailangan dun sa bakuna, no? So, sa mga local
Right,
government. So,
right.
maganda makakatulong yon.
Oo. So, mahalaga na kung wala kayong ID, pwede pa rin kayong magparehistro. Just bring along someone who is a registered voter in the area where you are registering. No?
Mhm.
So, kunwari, yung kapitbahay mo, registered voter, bitbitin mo, sabihin mo, oh, sige, patunayan mo na ako'y tiga dito. And
Mhm.
that will be accepted. Another
Mhm.
note, yung mga estudyante, because I said valid school ID, di ba? A
Yeah.
lot of students right now are complaining na yung ID nila, last year lang, pero wala silang ID ngayon.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
paano ba yon? Pwede po yung last year lang kasi siguro naman kamukha mo pa yon, di ba? Hindi pa naman yung itsura mo.
Valid
Uh,
point.
and that can still be used. Again, in consideration of the fact na medyo hirap ang mga estudyante ngayon to get valid ID. So, a school ID is acceptable.
Okay. So, valid ID, sir, ano yung sinasabi nila na kailangan i-fill up yung mga documents bago pa man pumunta ng COMELEC? Totoo po ba yun?
Well, yes, because ang registration natin requires you to fill up an application form.
Yes.
Now, you can fill up the application form at the COMELEC office, walang problema dyan, except that in order to do that, pipila ka ng bonggang-bongga.
Yes.
No, ang dami kasing nakapila eh. So you take your turn. To alleviate that problem, ang ginawa natin, naglagay tayo ng irehistro.comelec, no?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So just go to irehistro.comelec.gov.ph. Ulitin ko lang, irehistro.comelec.gov.ph, and you can fill up the forms online.
Mhm.
If you've
Mhm.
been anywhere during this pandemic, you'll see those QR codes that you scan and then you fill up the form on your phone. Ganun-ganon yung iRehistro, no? You type the address irehistro.comelec.gov.ph and it takes you to a form. And you fill out the form, one field at a time. And
Mhm.
then when that form is done, it'll download on your computer as a PDF file, and
Mhm.
then you print it. Print it, three copies yan, or well, three back-to-back pages, no?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it will have it'll take an 8.5 by 13 inch paper, so long bond paper.
Mhm.
You need
Mhm.
to print it back to back, okay? And you have to print it on, well, standard thickness paper. Wag yung sobrang kapal, wag din yung sobrang nipis.
Mhm.
It can be in black and white, no? Obviously.
Mhm.
So back to back, long bond paper, print it out, but do not affix your signature on it.
Okay.
Huwag ninyong pipirmahan
Mhm.
because you need to sign that in front of
Of
the
the
COMELEC
COMELEC
officer.
representative. Okay, that's very good, sir. Sir, anong alternative mo nun? Kung wala silang printer, yung forms available pagpunta nila sa COMELEC.
That's right. Pwede sila
Okay.
mag-walk-in. What they can do is they
Matagal
can
nga
set
lang.
an appointment, tas
Mhm.
doon na sila mag-fill up.
Okay. Anyway, we've covered the basic requirements and then the five W's and one H. We can now ask Max and then Lester for the questions and the questions of our listeners and our audiences. So let's start with you, Max. Go.
Hi, attorney. So, Ateneo's school ID doesn't have the birthday on it and doesn't have certain info that's usually present in a legal ID. But since it's a school ID, would this still be sufficient for registration?
Yeah, normally we don't ask for you're gonna fill out the birthday on your form anyway. So we
Okay.
don't need to see that on your ID. We need to see your age though. So we need to know, for instance, from your school ID, we need to have a general idea of how old you would be. And we can see that from the year level on the ID or if that's available. In
Mhm.
any case, just as a note, if offices have a question about your age, there have been election offices that have asked for copies of your birth certificate. Please
Mhm.
understand that the birth certificate is not a proof of identity, ha? It's a proof of age.
Yeah.
And normally, hinihingi natin yan for SK registrants and for people who are particularly young looking, no? Or who naduda kami na of age
Mhm.
na. But
Mhm.
to answer your question, Maxine, very quickly, yes, school IDs, even the Ateneo school ID will be acceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Last question.
Yes, sir. We've seen some potential candidates that are already posting um, uh, on some nga nasa government properties and private properties that seem to be early campaigning. I think it's your tweet or si Commissioner Guanzon that says that it is not a violation because it's not yet election period. But does COMELEC plan to revisit the rules in terms of campaigning?
Well, it's my tweet. And second, we would love to change the rules, but we can't.
Okay.
The problem there kasi is the legal definition of campaigning.
Yeah.
Campaigning is defined as an activity that's undertaken by a candidate. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a whole definition, but
Mm-hmm.
the crucial part there is that it's undertaken by a candidate. And
Mhm.
a candidate exists only if two things concur. The first is if a person has filed a certificate of candidacy, and
Yes.
second, if that person has reached the campaign period without being disqualified, which means you're only a candidate at the start of the campaign period, which is like all the way out there in February 8 pa if you're running for national office and March 25 if you're running for local. Which means that right now, until that point, you are a private citizen exercising your right to express yourself. No? And if someone actually does that for you, well, they're expressing their support for you. In fact, yun nga ang nakakatawa dito is a lot of people are against that practice because it's kadire, it's gross, it's epal, etc.
Mhm.
Well, yes, it's true. It's all of that.
Kaya kailangan kayo magpa-register, no? Oo.
But here's the reality of it, Algo, and I'm speaking directly to those who feel like they should be running as well. You can do this too, guys. If
Uh-huh.
there's someone that you like
Uh-huh.
who you want to run, do it for them then. If they're doing this for their candidates, you can actually literally do it for your candidate as well. You seen all of those run girl run streamers on
Sure, but
crosswalk.
they're on public spaces, so you need
Yeah,
permits to like put them up.
right. So it's not an electoral offense, but it could be an offense against public order. It could be a
Ah,
public
ah,
nuisance, di ba? Pwede yan. But what I'm saying is there are legitimate avenues of expressing your opinion. For instance, if you were to put up a Facebook page now to push for the candidacy of a person you really, really like, that's fine.
mhm, mhm,
They'll complain about it as well. But then you
mhm.
say, you do it too. Because
Okay.
that's the problem. Eh. And we've been pushing against this loophole for the longest time.
Uh-huh.
Since 2013, We've been talking to Congress over and over again, year in and year out, telling them you have to amend the law. Because the Supreme Court itself said in Peñera versus Comelec, Supreme Court, and I'm paraphrasing,
Mhm.
Supreme Court said, hey, look, we know how stupid this looks,
Mhm. Mhm.
but this is what the law says. And
Mhm.
the Supreme Court cannot change the law. It can only interpret
Mhm.
the law.
Mhm.
And if Congress doesn't get its act together, then that law will remain and the loophole will still be there. So
Mhm.
I'm figuring if you're being pragmatic about it, what's goose for the, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander, right?
Mhm.
So uh, that's where we are now. Of course, in an ideal world, dapat hindi pwede yan
Yeah.
because it skews the playing field in favor of the candidate with more money,
Yeah.
right? So again, it's disgusting, it's gross, and certainly I would like people to vote against people who do that. But legally speaking, there's really no consequence for it for them.
Our friend from TV5, Joey Francisco, sir, said nga, sinagot nyo nga rin daw na hindi tama, pero hindi bawal.
Yes.
So, yun yung sagot niya talaga. Anyway, sir, a student of mine from Ateneo, si Reo Garovillo, said this, read that the COMELEC will be a guest in your show. Hope it's not too late to request. If you can ask your guest if the COMELEC offices are open on Saturdays and we can walk in. Try to register online but it's full na daw. Will register my daughter also as a new voter.
Yes and yes. It's
Yeah.
open on Saturdays and you can walk in. Absolutely.
Okay. Next, sir, from G3 San Pedro, San Diego. Voters registration Tuesdays to Saturdays, even on holidays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. When I registered in our local COMELEC office in Rodriguez, Rizal, the man in the counter asked me for 120 pesos registration fee. Nagbayad ako. And then he said in a smug and lazy face, tapos na ang registration, bumalik na lang daw ako sa susunod na linggo. Hindi ako pumayag. It was only 1 p.m. and a Wednesday. I insisted that the registration is until 3 p.m. at walang bayad. One of the people in the office recognized me and offered to assist me. The man returned my 120 pesos and then I was allowed to register. So walang ibang nakapila. Sir, may mga ganong reports ba kayong nakukuha?
I got this one.
Yeah.
Please get in touch with me. Tell me what office. He said something kanina.
Yes, sir.
Rizal?
Rodriguez Rizal. Yes.
Yeah, and if you could give us the contact number of the person, then I would like to speak with him so that we can institute action against that whoever that asshole did
Sige
that
po.
tried to get money from him.
Sige
That's
po.
wrong.
Forward that. Max, Les, any other questions? Go.
All of the questions I thought of along the way were actually already answered because it was very
Great.
informative. So
Mhm.
I'm good.
Uh, Siguro additional question ko, sir, is I'm not sure if we are in the light of the end of the pandemic during elections in 2022. But just in case that we are still in a state of pandemic, is there a plan on how the vulnerable members of our society can vote safely and can avoid long lines
Sure.
in precincts?
Thanks, Les. I think it would be safe to say that we would not be out of the woods by the time the elections come around. Even with the purported vaccine on its way, we're never going to get vaccinated enough. At least not in 2022. No, malabong mangyari po yan. So we are planning on the basis of pandemic conditions existing in 2022.
Yeah.
So having said that, we are working very hard to make alternative means of voting available for our vulnerable sectors, particularly our older citizens and our persons with disabilities. No,
Mhm.
specifically, we're working on absentee voting for
Yes.
PWDs and senior citizens, and there's a proposal in Congress for postal voting. Now,
Okay.
of these two, postal voting and absentee voting, I would say that absentee voting is the more likely to be
Okay.
successfully deployed. Postal voting sort of leaves a lot of things to be done pa, no? Because you're gonna have to rely on couriers or mail service, and there might be some systemic problems there. Not to mention the fact that a lot of people are already sort of iffish
Yeah.
about the mail system. So ang malamang mangyari niyan is absentee voting or even early voting for our senior citizens and persons with disability. How that will work is they will be voting ahead of time from
Okay.
the rest of us, which means they will be voting in places na wala pa masyadong tao at sila-sila lang. And so we'll be able to control the environment better than if they had to crowd in with the rest of the estimated 61 million registered voters.
Galing. Sir, how about the manner of campaigning, sir? So that's a manner of voting. May iiba ba dun sa pagkakampanya? Sa mga rules?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that in the past few weeks, people have been talking about an outright ban on face-to-face campaigning. You know, in a perfect world, that would be great, except that it is not a perfect world, and we have the digital divide to consider. So, number one, it's not realistic to have an outright ban on face-to-face campaigning. So, there will most likely be restrictions on the campaigning that they can do, such as limitations on the number of people that can attend rallies, certain standards for conducting safe political rallies, for example. But there will also be a concomitant increase or opening up of social media as a platform for campaigning. The COMELEC will be working very hard to make sure that the social media remains a level playing field. As it is now kasi, uh, medyo merong advantage yung mga may kakayanan,
Yes.
no? Both in terms of mounting a social media campaign and in terms of accessing information from a social media campaign.
Yeah.
So it's both sides. What you know, politicians with more resources will be able to make maximum use of social media. At the same time, voters with access to internet will have the sort of access to information that voters without access to the internet
Yeah.
will get. So there is a need to level out that playing field,
That's
and
true.
we're looking at various ways. We're going to talk to the social media companies. I've sent out invitations to them as well, so that we can sit down and talk about this problem. Because well, we're coming up on the campaign period. The campaign period starts in February 8th, no,
Mm.
for national offices. But let's be honest, people will actually be campaigning long before that, right?
That's true.
Ngayon pa nga lang, as Lester pointed out,
Yeah.
nagsisimula na yung mga campaign feelers.
Yeah.
So we need to get this going stat.
Yes, sir. How about, sir, yung spending? How can you like monitor the spending kung nasa social media na yan? So you'll be getting rates at mga ganong klase.
Well, as far as social media goes naman kasi, libre naman ang social media pa rin eh.
Sir,
Right?
hindi. Yung iba, di ba, nababayaran na rin?
Well, oo. But in general kasi, distribution on the net is free. You can boost it,
That's
definitely. And you can put ads there. And we already put in place a mechanism for us to actually monitor that sort of spending. But
Mhm.
ultimately, a lot of the expenses for social is still in the production side
That's true.
rather than the distribution side. So we do have mechanisms that will allow us um, to keep track of the ads put out by individuals and
Yeah.
by political parties. And in that, the social media companies are very good about helping us with that. No,
Very good.
they sort of whitelisted us, and so we have access to a lot of that information.
Very good, sir. Kasi mga ambassadors or mga endorsers, social media endorsers, influencers, di ba? Merong bayad din sila.
So
So,
yun yung sinasabi ko na yung cost nila nasa production side, no, rather than on the distribution side. This is different from broadcast
that's
advertising
true.
where the main cost is the distribution cost, no, yung pagpapaere. And so yung production cost medyo nilalamon na nung
That's
cost ng pagpapaere.
that's true.
Sir,
Yeah,
since
go.
Joel mentioned yung regarding spending for campaigns, um, in the history of COMELEC, is there anyone that was already held accountable with regard to spending too much than what was intended for campaigns?
Absolutely. We
Meron
unseated the
na.
governor of Laguna a few years back, no? And there are some cases still pending in court. but the one that's actually reached finality is the governor of Laguna, who was unseated because of overspending.
So George Reagan Jr., sir, yun ba yun?
That,
So
that's it.
he cannot run anymore.
Uh, I'm not exactly sure what the penalty, whether or not it included disqualification, but certainly he was removed from office and he has not run since, as far as I know.
Okay. So maganda na napapakita na may mga sanctions. Sir, doon sa mga election protests,
Yeah.
kumusta po yung batting average ng COMELEC sa pagsosolve po nun from the previous elections?
Well, from 2010 to 2019, and just the other day,
Mhm.
wala pang election result na na-overturn.
Okay.
So sa 2010, 13, 16, and 19, so
Mhm.
these are 4 automated elections, and there have been hundreds of protests filed, but none of those hundreds of protests have ever resulted in any result being overturned.
Mhm.
And the last one was, of course, yung
The vice presidency,
yung isang
no?
araw lang ng vice presidency.
Sir,
Yes.
can you get your comment on that? Ano po yung posisyon ng COMELEC dyan? Kasi di ba parang meron din kayong recommendation dun sa Supreme Court. And then what if meron na namang motion for reconsideration?
Well, what we said to the Supreme Court, to the Presidential Electoral Tribunal,
Yes.
was that they have the power to overturn the results, but we stood firm on the veracity of our account, on the accuracy and reliability of our process. So, as far as we're concerned, the decision of the Supreme Court was simply an affirmation
Of
of the
your...
position that we took a long time ago, no.
Yeah.
Hindi naman natin matatanggal sa PET yung kanilang kapangyarihan to annul elections kapag may nakita silang problema, because that's precisely their function.
Yeah.
It's just that if they were asking us to change our minds about our counting, then no, that didn't happen. That wouldn't happen because we stand by our process.
Sir, parang yung point niyo, di ba, paano magkakaroon ng failure of elections kung yung presidential elections ay iba magiging resulta dun sa vice presidential
Well,
election?
that was our position, and
Yes.
we were pointing out simply that asking for the annulment of the election of one position would be, not very logical, considering that it was all one ballot, it was all one system, counting, at the same time,
Mhm.
and essentially being proclaimed at the same time. You cannot simply surgically remove one particular position because you're contesting that. So the whole ballot should stand or fall together.
Very good. Very well explained. Sir, next, the Smartmatic issue. Are we using the same system still in the next election?
Okay, it's like this. We bought machines from Smartmatic. So the machines that we're going to be using in 2022 will be branded Smartmatic. The device itself, no, the big VCM,
Mhm, yeah.
it has Smartmatic branding on it. That's because we bought it from them.
Uh-huh.
All right. But Smartmatic has never really managed our elections, not from 2010, 13, 16, or 19.
Mhm.
They were the vendors during those years, definitely. And so, kasama sila sa pagbubuo ng halalan. Pero managing the elections, running the polls, that was COMELEC all throughout. Now, as far as 2022 goes, we did try to get rid of the machines. We did try to get enough money to get all new machines. And by
Mhm.
all new, I mean, let's not use these Smartmatic branded machines anymore. Let's put them away. Let's get brand new ones. And we were going to open up bidding for that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Congress didn't give us the funds to do that. So, wanted as we did to get new machines, we couldn't, because we simply didn't have the budget for it. So
Mhm.
we had to make do with what we have.
So you wanted to get new machines because of what?
Well, because those machines were used in 2016 and again in 2019. Normally, we would like to use brand new machines to make
Okay.
sure na walang questions on that score. Kasi
Okay.
ngayon pa lang even if we refurbish this, some people are gonna say, that those machines are old. No?
Yeah.
And so just to forestall that, let's get new machines na lang.
Yeah. But
Unfortunately, hindi
meantime,
naman tayo pinagbigyan. And again, an incidental benefit to that would have been, well, we might have gotten rid of the word Smartmatic in the elections
yeah.
if we had done that, except that we didn't because we couldn't.
Okay. Any other questions, Max?
As a new voter, actually, a lot of my questions and concerns were already brought up and answered. So, like, after this session, what I'm thinking right now is, okay, as a new voter, I feel a lot more secure in the process and a lot more excited to carry it out myself. So, thank you for that.
Thank you,
That's
thank
very
you.
good, sir. But can you give us a data, sir, as to how many people registered already and ano pa yung target po natin?
Well, as of February 11, we've had about 1.9 million registrants. That's a mix of new registrants and reactivations.
Mababa po yan, sir,
Mababa yun,
sa target.
1.9.
Yeah.
Our target is something like 4 million.
Oh,
5 million if we include the reactivations. So we're only 1.9. So we still have a little over 3 million to go. And as if that weren't pressure enough, we need to do it by the end of September,
yeah.
which gives us about 6 months or 7 months, I guess, in order to do this. So it becomes very urgent to get people to register and to, get them processed para makaboto sila sa darating na halalan.
Pero paano na yan, sir? Parang how many voters, how many registrants can the COMELEC accommodate per day? Statistically.
The vote registration machines that we have, the devices that we use, process included, they can accommodate up to 70 per day.
70 per day. Hindi ako magaling sa math, sir. So 70 per day.
70 individuals per day. And
How many offices?
Ayan, unfortunately, it's not 1:1. Ano? So in some offices, marami tayong makina. In some offices, isa lang.
Yun
So in general, yun na nga, an office would serve anywhere from probably around 65 to 80 to 90 per day. No, again, the problem really is not so much that people are not coming. The problem is really the process.
Yes.
The process takes time, and with COVID measures in place, hindi natin sila pwedeng siksikan. Doon tayo bumabagal.
Sir, paano yun? Yung mandatory biometrics, di ba, na kailangan gawin?
Oh yeah. Kailangan nila magpa-biometrics kasi that's part of what the law says, no? We have a mandatory biometric system. So they need to get their picture taken and their fingerprints and their signature. And that's what they do on the voter registration machine.
Yes.
The voter registration machine is actually a complex of devices. It's not just the one machine. So it's a complex of several devices that take your picture, take your fingerprint, and record your signature.
Sir, saan po tayo kulang sa makina? Sang machines tayo kulang?
What do you mean?
Yan, kunyari, parang if we are to accommodate yun nga, the 7 million reactivation and then 3 million pa na new voters. Parang ano yung yun?
Yeah, I understand. Well, ordinarily, wala tayong problema because ordinarily, we would have about 2 years to register that many people. Nagkaka-problema tayo ngayon because we are set up for a 2-year registration process because that's how long it usually takes.
Sinisiksik natin hanggang
Sinisiksik natin. Because if you remember, I'm sure a lot of people don't remember anymore, we actually started registering at the start of 2019.
That's true.
Kaso napigil, 2020. Kaso napigil tayo eh.
Yes.
We started January of 2020 and then we had to stop. So nawalan tayo ng halos 1 taon.
Yes, sir.
And that's the problem.
So you don't want to ask the private sector to donate, kunyari, additional biometrics machine para pwedeng dalhin sa mga barangay or sa mga communities?
Hindi pwede because COA rules,
Oh, talaga donation.
And then of course, there's also a question of where do we put it, no?
Yeah.
Again, in a lot of places, COMELEC offices are as small as this box I'm in right now.
True.
So kung dinagdagan mo pa ng makina yan, hindi na rin safe COVID-wise. No? So we really do have to make do with the offices we have. What we can do is hold satellite registrations.
Yes.
And that's where so kunwari, dati, we had 10, let's say we had 5 machines running before. Now we can only operate 2 because of COVID measures. But with the satellite registration where we're more spaced out,
That's
we
true.
can suddenly trot out the 5 machines
Yeah.
working all at once, no? So, yun yung pinaka great hope natin, yung
Yeah.
satellite registration.
So big covered court siguro na sir or
Yes.
mga schools or
As you said
churches.
earlier, churchyards. We used to do
Yeah.
that in churchyards. We would do that in barangay halls. We would do that in clubhouses in those
Yes. Yes.
exclusive villages. And then we do that, of course, in malls. No,
Yeah.
so yung mga malalaking areas yan. In the atria of the mall, yung gitna,
Yes.
usually,
Yes.
bigla
Yes.
nagkakaroon.
Baka
Sir,
yan pa yung mas dumugin sir no kaysa yung mag-shopping.
Sigurado yan. In the
Yeah.
last registration cycle, nakita natin yung malls were actually choked doon
Yes.
sa mismong atria kasi ang daming nagpaparehistro.
Yes, that's
sir, additional question. When I registered to be a voter, I remember getting a voter's ID. Does COMELEC issue a voter's ID pa rin ngayon? Or what do they get once they register? Is there a reference number that they get, and then they check online if they are indeed eligible for voting, and then how do they check their precinct para sa araw ng eleksyon hindi sila naliligaw?
Okay. Number one, we don't issue voter IDs anymore. We stopped issuing new voter IDs 2012 in anticipation of the national ID. At the time, the national ID was like really up and coming. Kaso nagka-delay, and as a result, ngayon pa lang nila inaarangkada yung national ID. Relative to that, I would like to say, hindi po kami ang nag-i-issue ng national ID. So don't ask me about it. Wala po akong alam dyan. Wala kaming participation sa paggagawa ng ID na yan. Ano? In time, gagawin kaming registration center, but that's not happening now because we're busy with voter registration. Second, after you register, after you submit the form, magkakaroon po kayo ng acknowledgement receipt. This is what the young people call the stub. All right? The stub is proof that you registered. It's not proof of your status as a registered voter because you're not a registered voter yet.
Yes.
All right? After you submit your application, dadaan pa yan sa tinatawag nating Election Registration Board. This is a group of people who will sit and hear your application in case someone challenges your eligibility. Someone says, oh yan si Max, hindi yan nakatira dito, so hindi yan pwede magparehistro. So i-challenge yan ngayon doon sa Election Registration Board. Will you know about this? Well, you will only know about this if you are challenged.
Yeah.
So if you file an application and no one challenges, then you can assume 3 months later, registered voter ka na. Okay? But if you get a summons, then obviously may problema ka, right? But if you don't get summons, normally that would mean wala ka ng problema, registered voter ka na. And usually after 3 months. Why 3 months? Because the ERB or the Election Registration Board meets quarterly. Every 3 months yan. No? So kunwari, nag-start tayo ng January. So January, February, March. Sa March, meron siyang hearing. So kung nagparehistro ka ng January, sa March ka pa ma-hear, right? Pero pag nagparehistro ka ng March, malamang masama ka na doon. So your waiting time changes depending on when you actually registered. Finally, will you be able to check online your registration status? Unfortunately, we don't do that for data privacy reasons. When we're close to the elections, maybe mga a month or two before the elections, we will open up what we call a precinct finder.
Okay.
That's when you can go online and check
Very
your
good.
precinct assignment. But right now, not yet. No. Again, number one, because hindi pa naman tapos yung precincting natin dahil nagpaparehistro pa tayo. Pangalawa, meron tayong data privacy security concerns.
Sir, since you touched on precinct finders, I used to volunteer for Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, and one of our responsibilities is to help people locate their precinct.
Yes.
And sometimes it's difficult po for paminsan down yung system or mahirap hanapin. Is there a plan to make sure that just in case there is a large influx of people looking for information, to siguro somehow widen the capacity of the website that's carrying information. What's the plan regarding that?
Well, increased bandwidth is always a good idea, and we're always trying to increase our bandwidth. But specifically speaking of Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting (PPCRV), you guys have been our partners for the longest time, and you're one of the people who actually receive the list of voters. So PPCRV will actually have a hard copy of the list of voters.
Mhm.
It's sort of tedious to go through the entire list because it's like several books ng listahan ng botante, no? But push comes to shove, you can actually do a hard search kung talagang down yung internet natin. But yes, I agree. We would need greater bandwidth, and that's something that we're working on with the telcos.
Mhm. Sir, next question about the party list.
Yeah.
Kasi merong, di ba, nagde-delist kayo or parang nag-weed out ng mga hindi recognized na mga party list para maiwasan na yung problema ng dati. Ano na po yung situation ngayon?
Recently, we delisted 39, was it? 39 party list organizations. But the delisting was for a very, routine purpose, no? Under the law, if your party list organization failed to participate in the last two elections, you're out of your accreditation gets stripped. If you did participate but you failed to meet the 2% threshold, then you lose your accreditation as well. So ito yung tinanggalan natin ng accreditation. I've been asked questions about certain party list groups now that apparently are being asked to be disaccredited, but that goes through a process, no? And in fact, one of those processes is currently ongoing. Kinasuhan muna and then nag-request ng pagtatanggal ng accreditation. So that's a legal process. May hearing yan, may mga abogado dyan. That's not gonna be an instant removal from the list, unlike the 39. Now, as for the rest of the party list organizations, medyo iba na kasi yung theory ng party list ngayon eh. From its inception to now, nag-flip-flop na yung theory dyan. At first, it was for everyone. Then it was exclusive for marginalized and underrepresented. And now it's back to for everyone. No? But a lot of people are still sort of thinking of party list as something that should be exclusive for marginalized and underrepresented. Just to make it very clear, dahil sa kaso ng Atong Paglaom ay hindi na po totoo yan. Political parties can actually participate now. So wala na tayong pinag-uusapan na he doesn't deserve to be a party list organization, because right now the party list organization actually is open for everyone.
Okay. But we concentrate on the voters registration. Sir, last message for all the people who ought to be registering and will be partnering with you on this. Ano yung last call nyo po para sa mga tao, para pag inulit-ulit po namin itong call na to, makita nila yung kahalagahan ng proseso natin?
Papapaalala ko lang po sa mga kabataan, because I believe that's the main audience of the program, no? Ang mga kabataan po account for 35% of the voting population, fully a third of the voting population. Rough estimate recently, that's about 22 million voters already on record.
And can affect the results of the next election.
Absolutely. If you remember, in 2016, it took only 16 million votes to make a president. In the last elections, it only took around 14 million to get the 12th senator into the slot. So if you have 22 million, ganyang kalaki ang kapangyarihan ninyo. If the youth register, then they have the opportunity to actually shake things up around here. So if you're part of that and you're not yet registered, please do not miss out on your opportunity. Do not sit this one out. This is a very critical elections. We're electing everything from the president, the vice president, senators, all the way down to the town councils. All right, and it's very important. It's a way of rebooting our government. So please make sure you are part of that process. Magparehistro po kayo from Tuesdays to Saturdays, 8 to 5 p.m.
until September 30, 5 p.m.
That's right, until September 30, 2021.
Thank you, sir. Maraming salamat, Sir James Jimenez. We'll see you again and you have all our support.
Salamat.
Thank you,
Salamat.
Sir.
Thank you. Up next, we're talking about another concern of our general public, which is vaccine. So lahat tayo, yaan yung pinagkakaabalahan ngayon. At katulad ng election, di ba, yung registration, max and less, ito parang public responsibility, public duty, at saka yun, dapat hindi mahaluan ng politika. Up next, we're having a doctor, or a well-respected doctor, to join us after this break.
So many things I can't control, so many hurts that happen every day, so many heartaches that pierce the soul, so much pain that won't ever go away. How do we make it better? How do we make it through? What can we do when there's nothing we can do? We can be kind, we can take care of each other, we can remember that deep down inside we all need the same things, and maybe we'll find, if we are there for each other, that together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. Nobody really wants to fight, nobody really wants to go to war. If everyone wants to make things right, then what are we always fighting for? Does nobody want to see it? Does nobody understand? The power to heal is right here in our hands. Samahan niyo na ako. Wag mo na kayang palampasin, wag na wag mo na kayang palampasin, wag na wag mo na kayang patagalin, tenanaw mo na gawin mo na. Lakas ng kalooban, lakas ng katawan, wala kang uurungan pag yuman ang dumaan. Sarili pagbutihin, maging isip at damdamin, lahat sila'y ayain ng mag-level up na din. Go na go na go na go na go na go lang ng go.
Now the second concern after yung the voters registration, nasabi nga natin, responsibilidad natin at dapat hindi mahaluan ng politika. We have here the former president of the Philippine Society of Allergy, Asthma and Immunology, batang-bata. Well, siguro ang maganda dito yung disposition niya talaga, bata. Tapos sinaway po ako ng kaibigan naming doktor na si Dr. Melfred Hernandez. Sabi niya, bawal daw yung sabing doktora, it's just doctor. Dr. Marysia Recto, hello. Good afternoon, ma'am. Maraming salamat sa pagsama sa amin.
Hello, good afternoon, Noel. Good afternoon, Les and Maxine. And to all our viewers or on radio. I guess we're on radio now.
Yes, ma'am. Right? And we're on YouTube and we're on Facebook also.
Yes, I'm such a social media holdout. So hello to everyone.
No, but after this, we have to end at 5 o'clock because meron ka rin, social media holdout ba yan? Meron kayong online clinic na rin, di ba?
Yes,
so,
I have an online clinic. That's right.
So yun, pwede nating i-plug yung services. But now, ma'am, ito na nga. Again, the basic questions, no, bakit po kailangan magpabakuna? Yun yung unang tanong kasi yung mga tao ang daming takot, ang daming iwas dun sa usaping pagbabakuna.
Well, the aim of the vaccinations is that most of the society will get protected so that we achieve what we call herd immunity.
Yes.
Herd immunity is a natural immunity that is incurred when there are people who have been protected from the vaccine, and even though you did not get the vaccine, you will be protected also.
Yes, yes.
So that is what we want to achieve, that herd immunity.
So, kailangan. Pero ma'am, ano po yung usual takot ng mga tao? Bakit ayaw nila or iwas sila?
Well, there's so many misconceptions, no, about this vaccine, the vaccines, no, because there are several types of vaccines, no.
Yeah.
And the questions or the concerns range from allergic reactions, or mag-change ba yung DNA nila, mag-mutate ba sila, or parang will there be death, di ba?
Yeah. We'll talk about that. We will talk about that kasi may study kayo niyan, yung mga after.
Maraming concerns, no, about it. Will we be more prone to getting illnesses? Mahihina ba immunity natin?
Yeah.
Or will we develop
Sagutin niyo po 'yon. Kung may vaccine, hihina ba yung immunity?
Well, what the vaccine does is it allows us to produce our own antibodies. So antibodies are immune components that will combat a virus or a bacteria. But for viruses, viral infections, there's no cure. You really have, your immune system should be the one to control the virus. So that's why vaccines are very important for viral infections, because that's the only preventive measure. Aside from staying away. So the preventive measure occurs because the antibodies are produced in our system that once we get exposed to a virus, then you have protection already. You will not develop the symptoms, or if you get symptoms, they're very mild.
Okay. Lester, ayan na. Ano yung basic apprehension ng mga tao? Bakit ayaw magpabakuna? Ulit, so that Doctora can answer.
Well, ang dami kasing kumakalat sa social media, Noel.
Good. Okay.
About someone died because of the vaccine.
Sa ibang bansa, yes.
Abroad, sa ibang bansa, mayroong mga ganong cases, no? And, apparently it's being shared on social media, kaya mayroong apprehension.
Or aminin din natin, di ba ma'am, yung kunya Denvac siya, at yung mga iba pang mga bakuna of the past, na tipong yung mga tao parang nagdududa dun sa efficacy or yung epekto nito eventually sa kanila. So, how do we battle that, ma'am? Kasi yung posisyon natin, no, bakit kailangan magpabakuna? So, sabi nyo, ang ganda-ganda ng pagkasabi niyo sa akin kagabi, responsibilidad nating pangalagaan hindi lang yung sarili natin, kundi yung ibang tao.
Well, yes, the development on the scientific end, no, of herd immunity is what we want to achieve. And
Yes.
this means that to do that, we have to work together. That's why
Yes.
social response, it's a social and moral responsibility. Okay, I
Yes.
forgot to add to you because we want less people to die. We
Yes.
want less people to not be able to burden the society, burden the healthcare system because hindi kaya ng ating country, no? Hindi kaya ng bansa. So we that is the social and moral responsibility na okay, we can just try to protect ourselves and say that I don't want to get that reaction, which
Mm.
can occur one in what 100 million cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
Diba? So the risk of that happening versus the benefit to society, not
Mm.
only for health, but even for economy is a lot.
Yes.
Kaya importante na magpa-vaccinate. Ngayon, yung concerns that Les is mentioning about that reaction, and I think what he's referring to is the Filipina who got vaccinated
Yeah.
and developed like some sort of platelet or bleeding disorder after the vaccine.
Mm.
That reaction has been documented also with other vaccines. Even yung mga lumang vaccines, you know, like MMR, it has been reported. And we get MMR, I'm sure all of you had MMR and nothing happened to you.
Mm.
But why did this Filipina get it? People don't understand yet the reason. Okay, the companies are also not saying that it's not from the vaccine because there's always a risk that one person will react differently compared to the whole population.
Yes.
And that's why the ones who give the vaccines have to monitor talaga, no? They really have to monitor the patients that they give vaccines to so that you can already address the problems that will happen. Kasi the risk of that ITP, it's called ITP, idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, no? This is when an immune reaction occurs against your platelets. This is similar to what happens to dengue. When you have dengue, your platelets go down.
Yes.
So the dengue virus causes the platelet to go down. In ITP, they don't know the reason. They said maybe it's the vaccine, maybe it's an infection na hindi nyo alam. They cannot really say that the vaccine caused the ITP, but they also cannot say that the vaccine did not cause it. Okay? So what is that risk of that ITP occurring? You can count this number of people with your hands versus the millions in the world that have been vaccinated in the US, di ba? In the UK, they have been vaccinated in Europe. And we only have what we call yung reports that are very rare. No? So that's why our society, we really advocate vaccination because the risk of these things happening are so small compared to the benefit that it will have to society.
Wag lang naman matapat talaga sa iyo, ma'am, no? Kasi kung
Malas
yung
na
small
na. Alam mo, God's will. It's God's
Oh,
will. I believe in God. Okay? So I believe that if it is your time, it's your time.
Okay, ma'am, tanungin natin, siguro naman hindi pa natin time. Sino yung dapat or sino yung pwedeng magpabakuna?
Okay. I think I shared with you, Noel. We have
ready,
graphics, no, that we sent. But those that can be vaccinated are basically, for now, the studies kasi have been showing that patients who are 18 years old up to 65, because these are the ones that were tested in the studies of the vaccines nagbinigyan ng EUA.
Okay.
So, but there are also some of these studies that are still ongoing, and they have studied it also for the elderly.
Yes.
Okay, so yung mga children hindi pa napapag-aralan, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be given.
Okay.
So for now, that's the age recommendations.
Yes.
Now, if you have allergies, it's not a contraindication to have the vaccination.
Okay.
Unless you've had a reaction to a COVID vaccine already. Like for example, you had a vaccination to the Pfizer vaccine and there's supposed to be a booster dose. If you had a severe reaction to the Pfizer vaccine, or even the mild one, no? Sometimes we will not recommend to give the vaccine the second time.
Okay.
Now, why? Because some of the vaccines have what we call excipients. These are either preservatives or adjuvants, no, makes the vaccine stronger in action. They are the ones that cause the reaction, not the virus mismo, not the vaccine component.
Ma'am,
So
mas malakas daw yung second dose. Tama ba yun?
Well,
Mas
that
yun
in
kaysa
the
the first.
studies done in of the Pfizer vaccine, because that
Yes.
is the one that was first given EUA, no?
Yes.
That was what was reported, that the second dose had more reactions. But when you talk to many people who've had the vaccine in the US, no, and some of them are my own relatives,
Okay.
nothing. They did not
Wala.
react at all.
Okay.
So case to case, why do some people react more than others? It could be a genetic tendency.
Okay. Ma'am, so kailangan yung mga sino na mga taong pwedeng magpabakuna, kailangan din case to case na magtatanong sa doktor nila kung ano yung dapat na brand? Ganun ba po yan?
Well, right now, there are people who are asking us, what is the best brand?
Yes.
Like, what is the best brand that's hindi nakaka-allergy?
Okay, yan yung una.
So, yung unang concern nila, allergy. I don't know why all of a sudden it's the allergic issue that's there, no?
Okay.
But we cannot recommend yet and say with certainty that there is a vaccine that is the best or is hypoallergenic. Why? Because the use of these vaccines now are under EUA, which basically saying that the studies of these vaccines are still going on.
That's
and
true.
They are going to still be done in 2 years.
So ma'am, what's the reason bakit yung iba wala pang EUA?
Well, mainly because they haven't submitted complete documents to the FDA.
Yun din, di ba? So, yung sinabi yung Sinovac, for example, kung sabi ni Speaker Harry Roque, kung wala daw yung EUA ng February 18, madedelay na naman daw yung pagdating. So, ano lang po yung may EUA ngayon sa Philippines?
So far, it's Pfizer vaccines and AstraZeneca vaccines, which unfortunately are still both not here in the Philippines. Okay.
Mamaya pag-usapan po natin yan. Next, kung ako nagka-COVID, kasi kanina in-interview si Senator Angara, Sonny Angara, he had COVID and yun, na-survive niya at sabi niya baka may antibodies pa rin siya. Kailangan po pang magpa-vaccine nung mga nagka-COVID at yung merong antibodies.
Well, right now, the experts are recommending still for them to be vaccinated.
Pero hindi priority, no?
Hindi priority. So, usually, they're saying that if you've had the COVID already, around 3 months after the COVID is the earliest time you can have the vaccine. But, now studies are showing that the COVID immunity generated by a COVID infection can last for 6 months.
Okay.
So there is, and if it's more than 6 months, people don't know kasi they're still studying it, no? Yeah. So hopefully the immunity lasts longer para yung mga nagka-COVID hindi na magiging part of the pila, no?
Sa mauuna, yes.
Yes.
Speaking of pila, bago magtanong si Max at saka si Les, so sino-sino yung mauuna? Ano yung hierarchy po ng mauuna? Kayo po, di ba yung mauuna dapat?
Well, it's actually the frontliners. No, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not a frontliner. The frontliners are the doctors who go on duty and they do face-to-face encounters. Also, the nurses and also other hospital staff that really go and do physical encounters with patients.
So kayo social na online, parang ganon.
I am actually in line, but I'm not top of the line. But because I am connected with UPPGH, our director has ensured that we in PGH, the staff will be given vaccines, all of us.
Kunyari, I'm trying to understand kasi your spokesperson was chosen to be the first one na babakunahan because of the story na nagka-COVID. Ngayon, wala siyang antibodies?
That first person is my classmate.
Yeah.
Okay? He's also a pediatrician.
Yeah.
And yes, he went through something very traumatic. But he actually got his COVID last year pa, di ba? Last year pa yon.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we do not have yet the facility to determine if the antibodies that he has are the protective ones. You know, the
Oh,
antibody test that you hear about, the rapid antibody test,
yeah.
those are not the tests to show that you have antibody protection. Okay?
Talaga? Oh my God.
Yes, because antibodies are many kinds. And the kind of antibody that you have to prove that you have protection are called neutralizing antibodies.
Oh, ganun
And
pala
we
po
do not
yun.
have the test here in the Philippines.
Ah,
So that is the reason why, even if the spokesman of PGH had it already, he will still be chosen.
okay. Naku, para tayong nasa salamat, Doc, talaga. Pero we're really learning a lot at pinaghandaan namin kayo. No, now, Max, so questions so far.
Hello again. So, for vaccines with extremely low temperature requirements, how can we guarantee that they will stay viable between the time they leave storage facilities to the time they're given to patients?
Okay, so that's really more of a logistical issue, right? But you know, we have to be assured, no, if we get the vaccines from the companies legitimately,
Yes.
they
Okay.
the company will assure the viability of the vaccine.
Mhm.
So even though Pfizer has that negative 70 requirement, the Pfizer company has already made sure that there are facilities that will allow a proper transfer. The
Mhm.
problem is there are some people who are sourcing vaccines illegally or on the black market.
So, ma'am, you're aware of those? Na
I've heard
meron?
of it. I've heard of it, and I'm sure some of you have been offered
Yeah,
vaccines for sale.
yeah.
So unless it comes from the right direction from the company and government, passing through the
Yeah.
government, then we are assured of the quality of the vaccine.
Mhm.
Because how do we know if we buy it for ourselves, no, on our own, we buy it, and you're not supposed to buy it, That's
Mhm.
illegal. So if you're going to buy it for yourselves and then you're going to not store it properly, then it's like a waste of money.
Okay. Oh, ang daming concerns. Les, ikaw. Ma'am, ako yung syringe, di ba? It's a concern now. Baka raw, okay, nandyan yung vaccine, pero yung report sa ABS-CBN kagabi, baka magkulang yung a certain kind of syringe na kailangan kasi parang 5 doses yung pwedeng magawa. Tapos yung pang-anim na dose, kailangan ibagong syringe daw yung dapat gamitin.
Well, that's the problem with multi-dose vials, no?
Yes,
That
yes.
you will have a certain degree of wastage.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
in Japan, it's an issue for them that because they have the facility to buy that vaccine that can, the syringe that can get that extra,
That's
the
true.
last amount.
Yung sisimutin daw, ma'am, yung di ba? The last
Yes,
amount.
but
Yeah.
we don't have that. So
Yun.
even if we don't have that, the vaccination still goes on. It's
That's
just
true.
there is wastage.
So, wastage and then, pwede ho bang magkulang yung number ng syringe vis-a-vis yung vaccine?
No, the syringe that is going to be used for the regular vaccination is a regular syringe.
A regular
It can be
syringe.
bought. It's not a special one.
Okay. Kasi meron silang sinasabing hollow, parang ganun. Ibang
Ano
klaseng...
yan, sa Japan yan concern. Alam mo naman, Japanese, they're very exact, no?
Yes.
Tayo, unfortunately, we don't have that facility. And also in our Southeast Asian neighbors, they've already started vaccinating. They don't also have those syringes, but vaccination still went on.
Siguro yun na nga parang sinasabi syringe yung problema, vaccine nga wala pa. yun yung sinasabi. Anyway, let's go.
I think one of the reasons why there's hesitation also in getting the vaccines and getting vaccinated is kasi parang may lumabas na infographic about efficacy rate of different brands of vaccines.
Ayan na,
Parang
ma'am.
yung China vaccine is, the efficacy rate is 50% only, and then the the vaccines coming from Western countries, para mas mataas yung efficacy niya, around 70 to 90%. Ano pong comment niyo about doon, ma'am? About what is when we say efficacy rate, what does it mean?
Well, efficacy rate is the ability of the vaccine to prevent what it's supposed to prevent. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the aim really is to prevent the number of patients who will get the COVID.
Yes.
Or, that's the first thing, or to get a severe COVID. There's two,
Yeah.
Kasi
Yeah.
pwede you just get the ordinary COVID, colds, di ba?
Yeah.
Or you get the bad one that you get into the ICU.
Tapos yung bagong strand pa, yun bagong strain
And
pa.
then the variants, no? The variants from UK, South Africa. Now there's a Cebu variant raw. I don't know how that is, okay? We have our own local variant, okay? But
May lechong lechong Cebu, di ba?
masarap yon. Okay.
Okay.
So as I was saying, the efficacy rate varies per vaccination, okay? Because the vaccines rather are different kinds, no? Iba-iba. Some are from mRNA, some are from the killed vaccines, no? The others are from vector vaccines. Iba-iba. But
let's talk about them na. Sige, isa-isahin natin.
Let me answer. I might forget.
Okay, sige, game. Go.
What Lester was asking. The WHO really has a standard to say that this vaccine efficacy is enough to generate herd immunity.
Naku, sana naman.
So, hindi porket mas mahina yung isa, hindi nyo maa-achieve yung dapat puntahan. Okay? So, that's important to remember na it's not just because one has a higher efficacy, it will not, or a lower efficacy, it will not achieve the aim of herd immunity. Now, what's also important is to look at the parameters whether these vaccines will protect 100% from severe COVID.
That's true.
So you can have a low vaccine efficacy, but most of the patients did not get severe COVID. That means they got COVID, but it's mild. So that's fine.
Ma'am, no, it's not fine.
So,
Nobody
wants to get COVID.
Yeah.
But to choose between severe COVID and a COVID that is mild, I will choose the mild COVID.
Oo naman, ma'am. But kunyari ganito, kaya nga nagpapa-vaccinate or magpapa-vaccine para yun to lessen the chances, no? Tapos sabi nga, well, kung nga raw sabong panlaba, mapili tayo. Ano pa kaya yung ituturok sa katawan natin? So, let's go through the vaccines now available or that would be available. Ma'am, isa-isahin natin yung possible side effects or yung kinakatakutan at ano yung gains. So, let's talk about what's the first one to be approved here? Pfizer, ma'am, no? Yeah. How's that go? And you have data also from your relatives abroad.
Well, the Pfizer vaccine efficacy is high. I think it's one of the highest vaccine efficacies.
Mm-hmm.
Its ability to prevent against severe COVID was also documented to be high, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm sorry, it's not even 100%. Pfizer is not 100% vaccine for prevention of severe COVID. So you see, you have a high efficacy, but you have around, I'm sorry, I'm not so familiar with the stats, no, but mga 89% prevention of severe COVID. Okay. So yun ang parang I have relatives who've had it abroad and they're okay. Okay, they did not have any side effects. Now the risk of, there was some initial findings that these particular vaccines were actually more allergenic. That they caused this condition called anaphylaxis, which is a severe allergic reaction. Okay. But the rate was only around 1 in 100,000 patients.
Okay.
So it was not very significant.
Okay.
So yun yung sa Pfizer.
So meron talagang after effect, no? Lahat ng mga vaccines.
Not for everyone, Noel.
Not for everyone.
Not for everyone. Even the flu vaccine that we give.
Yeah.
I have patients who
I
have patients who don't react at all.
Okay.
And then I have patients who, after having the vaccine, they'll get fever.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, so everybody has their own reactions. We call that idiosyncratic. Okay? Kanya-kanyang reaction to vaccine. Okay. But in the studies that have been done, majority really did not have any reactions. And if they had, it was mild. Okay. What are mild reactions? Yung injection site pain.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Or parang redness there, local.
Yes.
Or they get fever, they get body pain. That is actually considered mild.
Okay.
Okay, so iba-ibang reaction.
And then, ma'am, yung AstraZeneca, which is I think what the local governments, LGUs ordered, no? So, ano naman po yung plus and minuses nito na narinig nyo? Or napag-aralan?
Well, I'm not the authority to give the statistics, no?
Yes,
Kasi
yes,
these are
yes.
usually the infectious disease doctors who
Yes.
know this well.
Yes.
But what I know from Astra is that it has reached 60+% of vaccine efficacy.
Okay.
Okay. And its ability to protect against severe COVID is 100%.
Okay.
Okay. Reaction rates are not so high. They have
Okay.
not. There's no issue about anaphylaxis or severe allergic reaction
Okay.
so far. The problem lang is, ayan, sa COVID strain, di ba?
Yes.
The
Yes.
variant.
Yes.
Hindi raw kasing effective for the South African type.
Okay. At least doon. Sana
So,
hindi na lang nating makontract yun. So but is it okay for mga senior citizen to take it?
well, the answer there is there really no studies that have been published yet
For senior citizens?
for seniors, but they are doing it already.
Okay.
So
Ma'am,
we just
kasi
have to
kasama
wait.
sila dun sa priority list. No? So after yung mga frontliners, yung mga essential workers, kasama yung mga senior citizens, di ba? So yun.
Yes. So I think most of the studies have not been done in senior citizens. Hindi nakafocus doon.
Okay.
And why? Well, it was the study design.
Yeah.
But what I am aware of are the studies that are ongoing are
Okay.
actually already including the seniors.
Ma'am, let's ask you, no? Lester, yung mom mo ba willing magpabakuna?
Hindi.
Ayun,
Sabi niya, I
eh.
was asking her the other day,
Mhm.
and I think it's because on social media, parang
Yun eh.
that's where the apprehension is coming from.
Ma'am, how about the senior citizens sa inyo, ma'am? Doktor?
Well, if you're asking about for example, in UPPGH, no, we have a group of professor emeriti, no? So these are the ones who are medyo above 65,
Tired, yes,
medyo
yes.
meron ng geriatric na.
Pero may status, di ba? May stature sa may sinasabi
They're still with the academe. They are listed.
Okay.
And well, in my own family, I think they will be vaccinated as well.
Okay.
So, I am not, in fact, some of the studies, the one of Pfizer, show that in the elderly, the few that they tested, no, on elderly, they had less reactions than the younger people.
Okay. That's good. That's a good data.
So, di ba yung sinabi na second dose, it's more mas grabe.
That's
Pag
true.
sa elderly in that population, there was less reactivity.
That's good. Ma'am, next one, yung Moderna vaccine.
Well, Moderna doesn't have yet an EUA.
Walang
Okay?
EUA, yes.
A little bit similar statistically with Pfizer.
Pfizer. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one, you have J&J, yung Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, the Johnson & Johnson, wala rin pang EUA. The only benefit I can see is it is a one-shot, di ba?
Yes,
One-shot
yes.
deal.
Yes.
But yung efficacy rate niya is not as high as the mRNA because remember, it's also a vector vaccine.
Ma'am,
So, mga...
Tama, paintindi nyo ma'am sa amin, bakit may one-shot vaccine tapos yung iba dalawa?
I'm sorry, I cannot answer that. I don't know the reason why, but maybe the study that they did was able to find out that the amount of antibody generated by the single shot was strong enough with a one-shot deal.
Isang sakit na lang, no? Tapos bunuan na lang, parang gano'n.
Yeah.
The Russian vaccine, ma'am.
I have totally no idea.
Pero makaka-receive ba tayo niyan?
Well, you know what? According to FDA, as long as they file an EUA and it gets approved by the FDA, and not to mention not only FDA, also the vaccine expert panel. There's also several agencies like the HTAC, no?
Yes,
These are the government agencies that see how many layers of experts it has to go through. No?
Yes.
This is actually that's the only time they're going to be used. So if the Russian vaccine applies, It will be evaluated. If they pass evaluation, then it can be available here.
Ito ma'am, yung baka una o hindi natin alam na popular na Sinovac or baka yan daw yung tinurok dun sa mga di ba? Mga
I think sa PSG or Sinopharm.
Sinopharm, yes ma'am. So these vaccines from China, kumusta po yung efficacy rate? Ano yung epekto?
Well, the data is not available to us yet, remember, because
Okay.
it's not published. Pfizer and Moderna, they have their data, in articles, in the medical field.
Yes.
But China studies, hindi pa napabasa, no? But I have heard that the efficacy rate is around 50%, above 50%. Okay. But their protection for vaccine efficacy, but for protection against severe COVID is 100%.
Okay. So kung sa Ateneo grading system, di siya pasado, parang yon. Pero pagdating naman dun sa major strain, A. So,
correct. So it's important to know what your aim is when you vaccinate. Diba? Do I want to be prevented against going into the ICU? Or do I want just to not get COVID at all? That would be the ideal, Noel.
Yes.
That we don't get COVID at all. But there's no perfect vaccine. And even the present vaccines that we have now, you will see that there are people who have the measles shot. They will still get measles.
That's true. So, ma'am, ang sinasabi nyo, kung ano na yung available na vaccine dyan, we take it na.
Correct.
Talaga.
One of my
ko kayo doon, pero
one of my colleagues who is an infectious disease, we asked that question, what's the best vaccine? And her answer was, the best vaccine is the vaccine that's available.
Okay. May natutunan.
So we can all dream about Moderna and all these things, but it's not coming, di ba?
So hindi siya sabong panlaban na meron kang choices ng brand. Basta kung ano na lang yung nandun sa shelf, kukunin mo na, parang gano'n.
Parang gano'n. Kasi nga, the vaccines are not for sale. You know, parang pinastrack sila to be available to the public because of health on social concerns, social health concerns.
Okay.
And so whatever can be given to us is what we have to receive.
Okay. Palitan mo na yung pangalan mo, Vaccine Cruise. Dapat gano'n. Max, question. Any question?
Okay, so before my question, I just want to say hi to Nessie. She told me she's lurking somewhere nearby. Okay, but for my next question, so in relation to fears and hesitations regarding the vaccine, because I do know people who have gotten one of the vaccines and one of them got flu-like symptoms after, but one became weak, vomited on top of other symptoms. So with these things happening, what can be done to assure the public that they will be taken care of for something like this? Like, are there protocols or procedures in place for people with these types of reactions?
Well, because of the nature of the vaccine that they are still under clinical trial, the government has really come up with some programs already to make sure that once there are vaccinations, that there will be doctors who are trained to recognize these symptoms. Yeah. So, the symptoms like the fever, that's actually not the symptom to watch out for. The symptom to watch out for are the rashes, especially the difficulty of breathing, and then the vomiting that occurs initially after. That's why our society has worked together with DOH, and many of we have some members of our society are part of NIFIC. NIFIC is an organization to look at vaccine adverse effects. And that's why we have come up with a lot of protocols and infographics to give to the vaccination centers.
Very good.
Kasi, we realize that not all centers will really have specialists like allergologists there. So we have to make sure that as long as there's a doctor there, that doctor would know what to do.
So grabe, no? Hintayin natin si Maria Rosario Vergere nagre-report ng COVID cases, and at the same time yung after effect, yung di ba, yung effects ng vaccine, no? So ang dami ng datang aayusin ng mga doktor. Ma'am, do we have enough people, or are you counting on volunteers or nurses or medical practitioners to facilitate this or do the vaccination?
What I know about, I'm not the expert on the vaccine rollout, no,
Yeah.
but I know that there are the centers, no, the government centers, there are designated vaccination centers.
Yeah.
And they will be equipped with enough healthcare workers and at least a doctor to be there. You don't
Yeah.
have to be a specialist to man the center. Okay? Kasi the doctors have been trained already to recognize and deal with the reactions. Now, if some patient gets a very strange reaction, no, then that's the time that this patient will be referred to a center, okay,
Yeah.
that can actually deal with that.
Yeah.
So, yon, parang I think we should be assured, no? In fact, after the vaccination, everybody has to wait for at least 30 minutes
Yun nga
to
po.
monitor for reaction. You will not be allowed to go home.
Ayun na nga. And Lester, did you hear that? Si Mayor Joy Balmonte in an interview sa ANC said Ateneo has said yes to being one of the vaccination centers. Totoo ba? Totoo
Good.
pala yun.
That's good because you have a medical school and the medical school can help you also man it.
Okay. Sige ma'am. Next question. So, the children are not required to be vaccinated, no?
Well, they're the last in the tier.
Okay. Okay. And then now you talk about the side effects. Yan po that we have to like caution ourselves with or parang that we should be aware of.
Well, as I've mentioned, the more common side effects that have been seen with these vaccines, with the different vaccines, whatever, kay mRNA yan, kay vector, kay whatever, they are local reactions, mild. Yan yung mga pain that or parang redness that can be addressed with just a paracetamol or maybe putting a cold compress, no, and resting, and then in a couple of days it's gone.
Okay.
Now, some people will have what we call systemic reactogenic reactions. Reactogenic means that your immune system got so hyper, it got inflamed. And so the products of inflammation are causing the symptoms like fever, joint pains, flu-like symptoms. That will get well naman when you give paracetamol also and rest.
Okay.
So those are the usual reactions. The ones that are more severe are the immune-mediated reactions.
Okay.
They can be allergy, or they can be called what we call immune complex reactions, like the person who got the ITP. Okay. So among the immune reactions, there's several types of immune reactions. The allergic reactions, if ever, are the more common ones, and they can be addressed by giving the epinephrine, right, for the breathing and antihistamines.
Okay. So parang you make it sound parang so safe. At least, no? So
yes, because,
under control, no?
I have to say that the government has really put a lot of effort in trying to fix this, no? Together with the societies, the medical societies involved.
Okay.
The doctors in private sector are also involved in trying to help the government come up with a safe program.
Ma'am, pero yun na nga, ang tanong ko, well, they've been trying to get their acts together, pero bakit wala pa nga yung vaccine? Yung isang sinabi nga po ni Senator Nancy Binay, no? So, yun parang from day one, what we had with this pandemic, lahat tayo reactionary. We have term sheets but no supply agreements. We should have had those supply agreements signed. 15% na lang daw instead of 20% ang ibibigay ng COVAX ng World Health Organization. And we have to pay $84 million for 5%. On the vaccine rollout, well, intindihin na lang natin ito, there's still no definite date sa pagdating ng vaccine. Ito yung sabi na practice na lang tayo ng practice. Pero sana we can ask countries like Vietnam what they are doing. Ma'am, what is there to learn about our Asian neighbors na monitor po ninyo?
Wow, I cannot comment really kasi it's really bureaucracy, no?
That's true.
It's how the governments are run.
Yes.
And maybe we were not prepared. We were not prepared for such an issue to occur.
Ako lagot ka kay Secretary Harry Roque. Ma'am, prepared daw sila at yun parang ginagawa nila.
I really don't think they were that prepared. Maybe they're prepared to a certain extent, but obviously there were many things that maybe people thought was easy to do, but there were some important steps that were not followed. Like for example, why was it delayed now? We
Yeah.
were all waiting for it. I was waiting to be vaccinated this week.
Yes.
Okay, but
Yes.
why not?
At
Because
the
of an
PGH before
indemnity
Valentine's
clause.
Day. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that one, that was what was funny. They kept on talking to the companies and trying to order already, but the indemnity clauses were not actually signed. So
Yeah.
why was it not signed? Well, the government's now saying that the company did not tell them. They did not inform that was needed.
Mm-hmm.
That is, so we don't know who's he said, she said, di ba? We
Yes.
don't
Yes.
know. So, but ako, I have confidence naman that it will come.
It will come, ma'am, but yun kunyari, nakakaiyak na sa Bangladesh, nagpapabakuna na raw sila, pero tayo wala pa. Sabi ni Senator Mig Subiri. Some people said, pati sa Zimbabwe daw meron na. But the thing here is, unahan po ba to or paayusan din naman ng rollout? Kasi
Well,
sabihin nila, buti na rin na-delay tayo kasi natututo tayo dun sa mga experiences ng mga nauna sa atin.
there are many factors involved there kung bakit hindi tayo nauna, no? Maybe it's the way also our laws were made, no?
Okay.
Hindi na-anticipate that this would be there, but it's a law. So how can you go around the law, di ba? Unless you change it. And of course, changing it takes time, right? So, and also not to mention that, for example, in Indonesia, they started vaccinating.
Yes.
They started vaccinating already with Sinovac.
Yes.
Okay? Now, it seems that our experts here are more discerning.
Yes.
Okay, with the kind of vaccine that they want to give to the population.
Public, yes.
So I don't know what they gave in Bangladesh.
Yes.
If we did not have very strict laws either, we would be having any vaccine that comes in.
True. That's true.
And I guess everybody is just being careful because especially what happened to the Dengvaxia scenario.
Yes. Yes.
We actually have a kumbaga siguro track record that we have to be careful here in the Philippines. The companies are careful because if this not rolled out well, it can be another fiasco.
That's true. That's true. So people were saying dapat may vaccine rollout muna bago bumalik sa MGCQ. Ma'am, what's your position on that? Na babalik na yung Metro Manila kasi 1 year, happy anniversary ng lockdown, di ba? Ng March.
Well, they are, malapit na March 17.
Yes,
no?
yes.
Parang dapat may celebration sa March 17. Anyway,
klase, no?
I personally will do not agree with the MGCQ, okay? Without the vaccine. Right now, many people are saying, oh, it's so bad here in the Philippines, that the infection rate is so out of control. I personally don't see it because in PGH, which is a COVID hospital, di ba?
Yes.
Right now, the total number of infected people are only 60 plus.
Okay.
And last year, it was like 180 plus admitted in the hospital. That's per day, huh?
Yes, yes.
So the statistics have gone down. And why? Why? Are we developing herd immunity, maybe? Or maybe we are really more careful.
Hindi nare-report, di ba? Yung iba, may mga report pang hindi pumapasok. May mga ganun si Dr. Reverhere, di ba?
Well, I guess, my only statistics are from PGH. So I don't know the national. But comparing us to the US and the UK, we're in, it's uncontrolled. Despite, you look at it, even though nagva-vaccinate sila, hindi pa rin sila controlled eh.
Yeah.
Why? It's because, I guess, our culture, we are a bit more compliant. The only problem that we have is we are medyo siksikan, no? It's true. Congested in Metro Manila. Okay. But if you look at it, you go out in the street, people are wearing their shields, they're wearing their masks.
Yeah.
So,
pero ma'am, yun nga.
I believe in the Pinoy.
Yeah. Tama naman, pero ang na-control sa atin hindi lang nga sakit, hindi lang COVID, kung ang daming kinontrol sa atin, di ba? Even our economic capability. Lester,
so that's the problem, the economy, no?
Yes.
Well, regarding your comment about Quezon City, Mayor Joy Belmonte mentioned today that there are 24 sites all over the city that are vaccination sites, and Ateneo de Manila and Siena College and churches in Quezon City will be vaccination sites.
But ganun
However,
na eh. Yeah.
kailangan daw ng
Volunteers,
I
di
think
ba?
accreditation din um, regarding the process from DOH. So waiting regarding that sa DOH to
Correct,
make the
correct. So,
process systematic.
ma'am, ano yung requirement for you to be a vaccination? Ano yung anong kailangan kondisyon pag nagbabakuna? Ma'am, bring us to that place kunyari papunta kami ni na Lester ni na Max sa isang bakunahan nagpapabakuna kami. Anong expect namin itsura?
What do you mean? I'm sorry. Are you asking
Kung
what?
magpapabakuna na kami, ano yung kunyari nakakita kami ng COVID site, 'di ba? Parang yung center para isolation center. Pero paano pag yung vaccination site? Ano po
I
yung
yan ang
kailangan?
hindi ko alam,
Aha,
Noel.
okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I'm not privy to the setup, no?
Yes,
So
yes.
kasi that is really done by the government agencies who
Okay.
are preparing for the vaccination center. But I think they will still consider the four important things, di ba? Social distancing, hand
Yes.
washing. Those
Yeah.
are basics, no? That will always be there. And I think even we have vaccines, we still have to do those things.
Ma'am, ito, sobrang on top of the head of some people. Yung sa flu shots kasi, pwede mong kunin sa bahay. Pang-swab din, pwede ring home service. Yung vaccine ba, hindi pa pwedeng home service?
I don't think so because they have to monitor for the adverse reaction. And
Okay.
that cannot be monitored at home. And if you are that kamalas-malas na tao, no,
Thank God, wag
you have
naman.
to be in an area where they can give you the right medication or the right treatment.
Okay. Max question, na-encourage ka bang magpabakuna dahil sa
You,
talk na to?
you know, if I'm being honest, of course I believe in vaccinations and I want to live life how we used to again.
Yeah.
But I think I'm still like, well, as you said a while ago, the best vaccine is the one we have. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a bit scared of being in the small percentage that has the side effect. So I'm still honestly a bit worried for that. But I'm hoping that once the vaccine rolls out here properly, legally of course, and the side effects hopefully lessen and we get the herd immunity, I hope to get it then.
Max question,
Yes.
will leaders or influential people taking the lead influence you into like getting yourself vaccinated?
You know, I will look at people online mostly to see their experience with it, because as I said, I've had friends, I know people abroad who've already gotten vaccinated. So for me, the weight of seeing public figures and the weight of seeing people I know are just the same. I will really gauge my decision off of the reactions and experiences. And I think the vaccine needs to roll out here for me to also make a decision so I can see how it's like here and how Filipinos are reacting to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Les, any other questions para kay Doktora?
Doktora, ano kaya yung pwedeng gawin ng isang
Yeah.
regular citizen? Halimbawa ako, I'm okay in getting vaccinated, but I have friends and relatives that are not convinced in getting vaccinated. How can I convince them?
Ma'am, you have to say yung there's more win in a vaccine. You have to say those terms. Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, the risk, our mainline tagline always is that risk of getting that reaction is so small compared to the benefit it will have for society. Okay? If you always think, I believe that we have to think beyond ourselves. Okay? We have to think of our society, our life, our countrymen who actually are suffering because they cannot work or they don't have any work.
Yeah.
All of these can happen. We can improve everything if we are protected.
Yeah.
So, if every single person is going to say na, I want another person to be ahead of me and I will wait and see,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
nothing will happen to us.
Yeah.
Okay? And I also believe that if when we have the vaccines, based on the data that have been shown to us, that the reaction rate is so low, and if ever it does happen, there are solutions to it.
Mhm.
Okay? Hindi yung porket magkaroon ka ng adverse reaction, it cannot be addressed.
Mhm.
Because there are also reactions to other vaccines that have already been used regularly that we don't even know about, yet we still have a vaccine, right?
Yeah.
So ito lang parang medyo masyadong hinahype. Okay?
Yeah.
I know that there are risks, but you always think of the social, and I've mentioned that moral responsibility to society. Okay? And to our economy, di ba? Kasi, okay ka sa bahay, nagtatago ka na lang, pero wala ka namang kakainin.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay? Your quality of life is bad, your mental health is bad, because you cannot move on, you cannot live the life you're supposed to live.
Sabi niyo nga parang additional protection from COVID, and then you may save lives, improve the quality of life, and enable economic recovery. Ma'am, timetable, hanggang kailan po ito yung sitwasyon natin na para ma-achieve yung herd immunity?
Wow, we cannot answer that. You know,
Talaga? Not even next year, no?
No, you know that, have you heard of the Spanish flu, di ba?
Yes,
They're
ma'am.
likening this to the Spanish flu that happened in 1918, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That Spanish flu, they had no vaccines. But herd immunity was achieved after, I think, around 6 or 7 years.
Okay. So, but
That was without vaccines.
so things won't go back to normal.
Not
Parang
right
until
away.
after.
Until the herd immunity is achieved.
Okay. And then MGCQ, ma'am, what's your stand again? Kasi yun nga, parang people are really bent on opening the economy.
I've seen that. I'm still apprehensive, especially without the vaccines, that people want to go to the movie houses. They want, to travel around the Philippines. We're already in a relatively good place. Okay? I mean, with safety of COVID vaccines. And the WHO has already given a warning that if we open MGCQ, we might actually go back to square one.
Ma'am, will the medical practitioners howl or at least like sound off pag ni-relax yung ganung restriction come May 1?
There is a possibility because the Health Professional Association, a coalition, no, this is a HPAAC of doctors are concerned, no?
Yes,
We're
yes.
actually the ones who are lobbying before na wag mo nang i-open yung GCQ, no?
Yes, yes.
And I think so far I haven't had any news about their stand now if
Yeah.
MGCQ will occur.
Ma'am,
So,
kasi kahit mga mayors, hating-hati, no? Parang so, well, we'll
so
see.
what? I can't blame, like even the people, the businessmen, they're really trying their best to go back into to let the economy move. Yet, di ba, hirap na hirap din sila. I can't, it's a very, very difficult
That's
situation.
true. Yun nga lang, pag lockdown ka, na okay lang naman sa atin, pero magbigay kayo ng ayuda. Yun talaga kasi hindi pa used up, ma'am, yung budget ng Bayanihan 1 and 2. Di ba? So parang hindi pa na-roll out din yun. So your position is walang pag-open ng restrictions until may vaccine.
Yes, that's my personal opinion.
Okay. Ma'am, final words. Kinonsensya nyo na kami ng sobra. Pero final words before you go to your client. Go.
So I just want to tell the public, no, na yes, there are risks for the vaccination. There are risks for these vaccines. There's also no one vaccine that we can consider as superior. Okay, there's also no vaccines yet in our country, but we have to look forward because this is the only hope we have. Okay, there is no anything that's going to wipe this all out and put us back to square one. We have to work together. We have to try to let our society go back to its old ways, and so that we can also just live our lives, how it was before. I mean, it's not perfect, but we have to try, and we have to do it together. Because if there's a group that will not join in the efforts, then we will not achieve our goals.
Maraming salamat, ma'am. We'll wrap up the show in a few minutes. But thank you very much for joining us. And yun, tama rin yung pangungonsenso kasi in the end, no, pag hindi tayo sama-sama dito, we won't be able to achieve what we want, yung herd immunity. Maraming salamat. But we have like educate really the public or assure them that things will be okay.
Yes, and also that the doctors are here to help and monitor the reactions. So if you are really fearful of the reactions, there are solutions. Okay, it doesn't mean if you react, doesn't mean something will happen to you that is really bad. You know what I mean?
Oh, we'll call you, ma'am, whatever happens, huh?
You can call our experts in the Philippine Society of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, www.psaai.org. You can post questions there.
Last, mag-happy anniversary ba tayo sa lockdown or mag-MGCQ tayo? What do you think?
Ako magla-lockdown.
Talaga? Okay, we'll see kung tama kayo. Textan tayo. Thank you, Dr. Marysia, Recto. Maraming salamat. Now we go to you, Max and Les. Okay, let's tie this all up from voters registration to vaccination. Ano yung final messages? Les, ikaw.
Siguro ako, I'd like to quote Pope Francis, no? Regarding his interview about the vaccine. Nang sabi niya, I believe that morally everyone must take the vaccine. It is a moral choice because it is about your life. But also the lives of others. Kumbaga, parang hindi lang sariling buhay, kundi buhay din ng mga taong nakapaligid sa atin. Tapos regarding siguro sa pagboto, kung tayo ay maraming concerns sa kung paano ang pamamahala ng ating gobyerno, siguro simulan natin sa pagrehistro at kung tayo ay registered already, we need to educate ourselves. If you are in the position, volunteer for voters education and help educate the public to make an informed and educated choice for the upcoming elections.
At kung yung COVID tinatry nating i-eradicate, no, yung mga leaders na talagang nakita nating non-performing or yung parang ganito yung kinasadlakan natin, yung naghatid sa atin sa ganitong sitwasyon. Please, yun parang let's change, di ba? Baguhin. Let's Max, go.
Actually, when you brought up how it's almost about to be a year of lockdown, that really put things into perspective for me. Because wow, it's been that long and we're still here. But anyway, both of the topics that we talked about today, like voters registration and vaccination, they both seem to be very different. But a similarity I did see is that both of them are ways to concretize things that we want. So in terms of voters registration, voting is a way to concretize a goal we have for the country, and that's good leadership so that we can live better lives, so that we can bounce back and experience some semblance of comfort. And then vaccines, while they're still not here and people are still making their decisions, when they are here, it is our responsibility also, as what Dr. Recto mentioned, to take the vaccine so that we can also contribute to going back to normal life and to having herd immunity. So to everyone who watched today, who joined us today, we hope that everything that was discussed and that was talked about shed some, at least a little bit of light on these two very important decisions that all of us need to make and that all of us need to be responsible enough to make, so that one day we can go back to living, as I said, to living how we'd like to. Maybe not exactly how we used to, but I guess living the way we need to.
That's true. At this point, and then my final point is vaccination and registration, voters registration, are non-partisan activities. Hindi dapat hinahaluan ng politika. And they are our duties as citizens, and that it not be politicized. Let us all take part in it. Well, yun yung maganda, no? We waived everything. Pwedeng i-share nga lahat ng mga knowledge na to. But kailangan natin ikampanya yung voters registration and yung vaccination. Ang hirap pareho, pero kailangan natin gawin. So, thank you very much for leveling up with us. Salamat, Les, ulit. Salamat, Max. Next week, nag-request ako na mas maaga kasi yung guest natin will come in right after Eat Bulaga. Yan yung yan yung cue. So 2 o'clock, Level Up will be at 2 o'clock to 4 next week. Pero holiday pala on the 25th. So the Thursday shows pala are off air. So yun. So we'll see you again on Friday. Yan, it will be a fun episode naman next week. Tatawa tayo at we will go art and laughter and comedy. Siguro that's the way on the way we address these things after this heavy, kind of heavy issues and public service that we had today. So happy anniversary, Radyo Katipunan. Ako, naka 3 years na tayo.
Happy anniversary, RK!
Grabe, no? Parang at patuloy pa rin tayong parang nag-challenge na mag-tackle ng mga issues na ganito. At we're enjoying it and we're learning a lot from it. And then, ang mahirap yan yung action part. Now we know, now we're more knowledgeable, pero yung magpaturok at pumunta at magkampanya, sabi nga Lester, mangampanya para mag-register yung mga tao, kakaiba, lalo na nandun pa rin yung reality ng COVID. So, yun. So, let's continue leveling up. Maraming salamat and happy weekend, everyone. Thanks, Max. Thanks, Les.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you next week.
Di kailanman mapipigilan pagbuhos ng ulan. Ang buhay sadyang ganyan.
At kaya ng papago-pagong pag-ihip ng hangin. Lahat ay lilipas at magsasalita.
Huwag kang mabahala, huwag mataranta. Hindi kailangan ang mag-alilangan pa.
Isipin mo laging nandito lamang ang aking balikat, sa'yo'y nakaabang.
Asahan mo, hindi ka iiwan sa mundo. Lahat may hangganan, asahan mo. Wala nang atrasan sa iyong bawat hakbang.